It's good to be with you again. My name is Jumoke Michaels. Banji is right here too.
Oh yes, Jumoke, we are back at our duty post. It's the midweek edition, as you rightly stated. My name is Banji Busari. Of course, this is Summit, and we assure you a very exciting edition today. You are welcome.
So a lot is happening in the polity now. The courts have been discharging and affirming different people in some states in the federation, and so there's been change of buttons, and the courts have been very, very busy. You will agree with me. Well, we'll be talking today about the governorship. We'll be talking today about the governors that the court have sacked, but of course you know that they still have an option of going to the Supreme Court. What is this doing to our polity and our nation, Nigeria? Today, to discuss these issues with us, we have our friend in the house and a public affairs analyst, and not just that, he's also an attorney at law. So he'll be able to give us a balanced view to these issues. Mr. Jide Ologun, you're welcome.
There is what we call voluntary assumption of risk in law. For instance, you know that you are standing on a rail track and you choose to answer phone calls and send text messages, and you have your earplugs on. You should expect that any strange thing can happen. You see, the rule of law stipulates that no one is above the law. And we have three arms of government. You have the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. And Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999, as amended, stipulates that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good governance of Nigeria. So when these laws and regulations are rolled out, it is your responsibility to obey. In the case of the Plateau State decision of the Court of Appeal, there was a court order that PDP should conduct Congress in the 17 local government areas before presenting a candidate. And if you look at Section 177 subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it stipulates who can contest successfully for the office of governor. You must be a citizen by birth. You must be a member of a political party. You must be sponsored by that political party. And I think the age is 35 years of age. And when you put all this together, and the fact that your minimum academic requirement is school certificate, then you know that this is prerequisite to what I'm doing. So if, for instance, now I say, oh, I'm a very rich man, I have my money, and I go and build on a canal that is expected to help water flow freely to the river, and I'm saying that I have built. When the government comes to pull this building down, you're not expected to shout. So, and the court has emphasized in the case of Plateau State that you disobey that order. So, on the platform of the laws of the land, particularly the constitutional law that I made reference to, PDP did not have a candidate for that election. And the court is saying you cannot build anything on nothing. And let me say this, I've been saying it's not populous. It's not by popular opinion. If it is by popular opinion, a law provision would have been made that, okay, don't come to the judiciary, go and settle it on the street. It's not an internet sensational thing. The laws are there. The courts are to interpret the laws. And I think almost all parties have been affected. In Zina Sarawa State, the candidate of APC was told to step aside. But having said all this, whether you're talking of Plateau State or the other states, the opportunity of going to the apex court is still there. Because if you look at the precedent of the case of Adeleke, Governor Adeleke of Osun State, and the former governor Oyetola lost to Adeleke, and APC went to court, to the tribunal, to allege overvoting. And at the tribunal level, the victory of Adeleke was upturned. And Adeleke proceeded to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal reinstated it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court confirmed his victory. Let's now go to the exercise of judicial intervention itself. If you go by Section 131 of the Evidence Act 2011, it stipulates clearly that if you are approaching the court to seek some reliefs and you are relying on some facts, the burden of proof is on you. So it's not just for you to allege. You bring your evidence, you bring your witnesses, you follow the rules of the court. And that's what some people refer to as technicalities. You cannot divorce technicalities from the substantive issue you've come to court with, because the court won't just donate justice to you. You have to prove your case. And what has been done is to give all parties the privilege of fair hearing, so that you come and prove your case before the court. I think in the case, one of these cases, the court had to rely on the ECA form that were brought from the polling unit, because we are not discussing that today. Much was said about IREV, but the court has stated clearly, even at the apex court level, Supreme Court, that the IREV is not a collation equipment. It's just a storage equipment. So politicians also should learn that if there are rules, there are rules.
Okay, let's look at in all the cases, I believe the courts have been able to establish infractions varying from one state to another. If we move to Kano State now, it's also related to what Jumoke said earlier on, the pre-election issue of Governor Abba Yusuf not being a member of NNPP. That's a registered member of NNPP, besides the fact that during the elections there were fake ballot papers used in favor of NNPP. Now the question I'd like to ask is, what is the role of INEC in all of this? Is it just to supervise, or what extent does it have powers to actually interrogate or probe the qualification of candidates before elections actually takes place?
Thank you very much. INEC is a creation of the Constitution to carry out some mandate responsibilities, including conducting elections, supervising the expenses of political parties, educating where necessary, and I still stand by my position that even the guidelines and regulations of INEC, they have left discretionary gaps open for INEC. For instance, the use of beavers is not mandatory in the eyes of the law, so to say. You must transfer results to IREV in real time. It's not mandatory. It is if INEC chooses to. It cannot form the basis of nullifying the final decision of INEC. And that is why the National Assembly still has a role to play. Look at these laws. After all, the Electoral Act of 2022 was amended, coming from what we used to have, under which we had the new provision that, okay, if a political appointee, you must resign before you get active in seeking office through the primaries, and it was put to test. So you monitor these laws and look at the gaps. I think INEC has too much discretion that are not actionable. And in the case of Kano State, if there are allegations that there were results or whatever that were not endorsed by INEC, the INEC should be held responsible. But again, it depends on the contents of our laws, because INEC should be seen to be above board. And that's why the parties must be on their toes. So if this happens, who is responsible? These are lines of accountability, because at the end of the day, the candidates fall victim to all of
For instance, if you look at the case of a total number of 162 votes being deducted from the governor's overall vote, he scored over 1,019,000 votes. Now 162 was deducted. That should have primarily been the job of INEC, not the courts.
That is what I just said now. And again, let's learn. A man said, I think Chester Carroll, that in life you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. You have polling agents, party agents at the polling units. If I were to be a party agent, I know my radical nature. I want to ensure that at that polling unit, what should be done is done. And that was one of the things the chairman of INEC was saying during the presidential elections, that come, you don't need to shout around. Monitor this thing from the polling units, because the result that we finally come to IREF will be the result from the polling units. And you can apply for the certified true copy. So we read a lot of things. So no one is exonerating INEC now. Look at the case of Benani, where an INEC officer came announcing a result when he was not. So are there consequences for all this? That is my concern. So if the National Assembly is comfortable with all this, and the executive also is comfortable not to prosecute offenders, then who is complaining then? So that means we need to visit our global system of justice in the land.
All right, so you mentioned the Electoral Act 2022 just now in your submission, and I just want to ask that, how well is that new Electoral Act actually playing in all this? Is there any difference from how things have been based on this Electoral Act?
Definitely.
What are the differences?
Under the Electoral Act, establishing overvoting will be based on the number of accredited voters, not an open thing.
Is it working in this case?
It should be working. You see, let me just explain that if you have a case in court, you don't depend on the other party to prove your case for you. So everything you need to prove your case, you present it before the court. Follow the rules of the court. And that was a strong point emphasized during the Presidential Tribunal final decision that was read for about 13 hours, chronicling how and when this was brought, how some witnesses were not presented, judicial interventions. You come with your full arsenal. You don't go there as a timid or thinking that justice will be donated to you. No, it's not done that way. So, and then, the senior silk, Femi Falana also advised, on this case of INEC and the umpire rule, it may appear unfair, but at the same time, politicians also need to learn what they should learn. If there's anything you should do it before proceeding. Now, let's assume that Mitv Silva, let's assume he won in Bayelsa State. They will still go to court on the fact that he has served as governor twice. They might begin to argue on whether he completed 8 years or not. So that is an issue that was pre-election, but fundamental to his occupying that office. But politicians, they just say, let's go. Yes, and whether some are angry or not angry, we have empowered the judiciary to make decisions. If you are not satisfied at the tribunal, you go to the appellate level. But the moment your matter gets to Supreme Court, you can only shout and murmur and grumble. So why don't you follow the advice of a wise man who said it is better to measure 10 times and cut once than to measure once and cut 10 times? You familiarize yourself with what the rules are.
Looking at the issues of technicalities, let's go back to Kano State again. Now, the Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf has lost at the tribunal level, lost again at the appeal level. What are his chances at the Supreme Court? Are there such precedents in the past where a case was lost at the lower courts and then the person suddenly becomes the winner at the Supreme Court? What are his chances?
I don't want to preempt the court as a lawyer myself, but I just expect that at the apex court level, they are dealing with the issues of law. It's not a court of evidence. So whether the appellate court erred in arriving at this decision. So I hope that their positions will be well presented. But going by precedents, like you said, I have given the precedents of Adeleke and Oyetola. The Supreme Court followed the decision of the appellate court, but maybe not in all cases. You also remember the case of Uzodinma in Imo State. So anything can happen. Again, it depends on how these matters are presented before the Supreme Court. But my position is clear. Wherever it turns, Supreme Court is final. So this opportunity should be maximized. So if you need victory, you must be able to convince the court. And let me say this, at the appellate level, Court of Appeal, so to say, you have 3 justices. So it's not as if you have a single justice sitting over these matters. At the Supreme Court level, you have 5. You see, so when people begin to talk about judiciary, and they are all entitled to their decisions that will be harnessed. So it's either they have unanimous decision or dissenting, in which case you now bring in majority. So
talking about unanimity, I found out that in all the cases judged, all the justices have been unanimous in their decision. So,
like, sir, this thing is clear. I like to use analogy. If I bought a first class ticket to travel to New York City, I have my visa, I have my passport, I have my money, I have my jacket and tie, I'm ready for the trip, and the airline says arrive airport 3 hours before your flight, and my flight is 3 p.m. and I'm saying, oh, I have my passport, I have my visa, I know where I'm going in the US, and I arrive airport at 5 p.m. and I start shouting that you people are, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. And the justices will listen to parties, benchmark their presentations with the provisions of the law. Look at the case of Abuja status. It went on and on and on. Oh, you must win in Abuja. Then the argument was that if Abuja is now a superpower state and all other states are underdogs to Abuja, then maybe we should just conduct presidential election in Abuja alone. And whoever wins, we adopt that victory in all the other states. And the justices came to a conclusion that no, Abuja is just like any other state. So you expect that you go to a precedent, and the moment these courts pronounce on these provisions of our legislation, particularly at the apex court level, it confirms that law. But you may be surprised that in 2027, if some politicians choose to go to court, this case of Abuja may spring up again. Because, like I said, lawyers don't lose cases.
it's a client.
It's the client that loses. So whether you lose or not, you pay. In this age and time, if I'm going to Singapore, and I assume I have never been there before, I can Google the hotel I'm going to in Singapore. Bring me the image. Even bring me videos. Let me see the rooms and things like that to prepare myself. So litigants also can sit down, except they claim they don't have the time, to look at, okay, I'm going for a battle. How do I prepare myself? Because it's quite embarrassing. With all due respect, at the tribunal level, during the presidential election, judicial interventions, there were about 89 senior advocates of Nigeria, apart from the other lawyers. If you add their practice, experiences, age together, it's over 100 years of practice experience. So one would have expected that you look deeply. You know, it was quite disturbing when the justices were reading. I'm sure some people who said they should broadcast live could not even continue. And that's why they took the time to read. This is what should be done. This is so. If what should be done is not done, then what can be done? That's the big question.
All right, now see that Nigeria has been practicing democracy uninterrupted for several years now. This practice of allowing courts to decide or determine our leaders, if we allow it to continue, how well is it going to help our democracy going forward?
Is the government of the
because
people...
we vote, and then at the end of the day, the vote, it's like our votes don't count, or the people's wishes are not who gets into power at the end of the day. Would it not further
make people lose interest
exactly,
or lose confidence.
Voter apathy, is it not what is driving
We
towards?
need a global systemic restructuring where our system functions. If not, we'll be debating this over and over. I did a research. The first democratic election in Nigeria took place in 1919, 1920, to the House of Commons or whatever in Lagos State, electing 3 members. All right. Then later another one in Calabar to make it 4. Then we had the elections of 1923. You have the elections of 1959 towards our independence. You have the one of 1964, 1965, and on and on and on. So there had always been complaints. And that is why the big question is that, are we really practicing democracy? Because the intention of democracy is to enhance the fortunes of the people. So we should have been expected to have gone so far to a season where I intentionally told us that about 346 judges were gotten ready for all these interventions. So it's all about what we want. And I said it, the National Assembly and the House of Assembly at the state levels are the unique feature of democracy. Under the military regime, we don't have them. You have the Supreme Military Council. So they are the ones representing the constituencies and the electors and the citizens. And we have 109 senators, 360 members. So let them sit down and make laws. For instance, that okay, no one is sworn into office unless the judicial interventions are concluded, or the decision of INEC is final on elections, no judicial intervention. But as long as those laws are there, we continue to run on the strength of those laws. And they have the power to amend our laws. But then, the big question is that, will it favor them? What characteristics are attached to politicking in Nigeria? I mean, I expressed my complaint. We are talking of opposition and this and that. That's why I don't have sympathy for some of these politicians. The National Assembly is a bouquet of different legislators from different parties. But none of them rejected the SUV. That is being to say, oh, people are suffering, there is poverty in the land, no, I will not accept. So you find that we still have to probably redefine and re-understudy the essence of democracy, which is creating commonwealth through our abundant resources for common good of the citizens. And that's when you start talking about governance. These electoral processes are just processes to electing leaders to engage our resources.
Okay, let's look at it, because still on what Jumoke asked earlier on. I'm also bothered about the legitimacy of people who actually emerge through the court's pronouncements and judgments like this. Look at the case of Imo, for instance. The 4th person in the lineup of the results actually emerged the governor of the state, such as we are already experiencing now. There's a gap between the person that emerged, but the person from the 3rd position may eventually take over. So what about legitimacy? Are we thinking about that?
It is legitimate. If the decisions of the court are not legitimate, Uzodinma should be out of office. And that is what you see, the judiciary interprets the law.
Legitimacy and acceptability by the people.
Acceptability is a different thing. If the society is so concerned and worried, let them go and stand on the shoulders of the legislators that are representing them, either at the House of Assembly at the state level or at the national level, that we are not satisfied with what is going on. Amend the laws to reflect this and this
it's
and
already
this.
Happening in Plateau.
Exactly. But as long as these laws are there, they have not been repealed, they have not been amended, they will be interpreted as so. And let me say this, politicians also have a way of arousing emotions. Laws are not about emotions. Laws are not about emotions.
So the people are expected to just accept this judgment.
The people are not expected to accept. What can they do? Okay, they want to go out there and be destroying things. The government will clamp down on them. How far did we go with NSAS? I like to follow provisions. Look at this section of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended that was tested. That political appointees, you have to step aside if you are interested in being active during the primaries and things like that. And the likes of Amechi stepped out of office. Ngige wanted to step out and he considered that, hey, let me hold this one, I'm not so sure of that one. He stayed back. Yeah. Let's have laws. Laws. Okay, is it going to hurt anyone if the National Assembly gets angry and say, okay, any result that is not transmitted from the polling unit to the IREF real time stands nullified, and any INEC official that is found guilty of this goes to jail for 72 years or whatever the law stipulates? But you see, we have a global crisis in the country. I was shocked when I read that about 45 billion naira has been recovered from sponsors of terrorism, and yet the government is claiming they will not name and shame the sponsors. So what are we doing?
Okay, as we wind up, let me ask you. Some people speculate that APC might be the ultimate or somehow a beneficiary of this court proceedings and all of that. That in Kano, for instance, it's NNPP that is in the saddle now, may be removed and replaced by APC candidate. In Plateau State, it's the PDP that's in the saddle now, may be removed and replaced by APC. Same for even Zamfara. Now, if you look at it, does it not show that we are gravitating towards a one-state kind of scenario?
If I answer that question politically speaking, I can just respond by saying I do not trust any politician to play active opposition. I just mentioned the case of SUV. You may be shocked that those who are crying foul now are in the party they are shouting against. Look at what happened during the last general elections. The G5. They abandoned their party stylishly at the presidential level. And one of them is a minister now. So who is talking about opposition? Who is talking about one party state? It's all about politicians. So the big question now is that, are we amplifying state interest, party interest, or personal interest? Go and profile the major stakeholders in Nigerian politics. Majority of them have migrated from one party to the other in their season of career, and you can be sure that if the one they claim is in opposition is the one that offers the chances of their fulfilling their ambition, they jump boat. So I've studied it to that extent. My concern is that we are the benefit for the citizens. I'm so worried that the nation that has the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa has a population of about 150 million out of the 220 million estimated population in the multifaceted poverty window. It's alarming. It's alarming.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Nigeria has a lot of prospects. The citizens should be living better than we do. But we believe that, like we always say, go better.
People are asking when.
You go better.
People are asking when. You know, we so keep hope alive. But let's just address our leaders also. You've remembered for what of.
But are you sure the judiciary is also living up to expectation in the whole of all of this?
I'm in that industry.
Okay.
You see, what you feed in determines what you bring out. I just want people to calm down and go and study beyond sentiments and everything. I don't want to say. So, if you want to win your case, you fight your case.
We'll move on to the next segment of the program, like we always do, showcasing the developmental strides of the Babajide Sanwo-Olu administration in Lagos. Please enjoy the package. We'll see you again next week. My name is Chimoke Michaels. Bye-bye.
And my name is Banji Busari. It's been an exciting program, like I told you, and it's an evolving process. We believe that what the courts are pronouncing may not necessarily be an end in the cases of the disputes, gubernatorial election disputes. See you again next week. Bye-bye.